but I knew that half of my family, I thought, they're gypsies. Nobody could be that bad.
Can you imagine your mum keeping that secret for such a long time?
50 years. My father never knew, nobody ever knew. Because if she'd have told my father, he would never have married her, I would imagine.
Well, he's won 2 Oscars and a reputation which grows as he gets older.
So because every older actor who gave me advice, 99% of them told me to give it up.
At 90, barely able to walk, he told the world Hollywood had seen the last of him.
It's self-defeating in a funny way because it's terribly difficult to make it look like you're not doing anything.
The man who survived the Blitz, who rose from poverty to knighthood, who gave us Alfie, Get Carter, and Alfred Pennyworth, finally admitted defeat.
We all knew that we were never going to be rich and famous.
Not to critics or audiences, but to time itself. His spine was failing, every step was agony, and the cane he gripped wasn't a prop anymore. It was survival. The Great Escaper would be his final bow, his last gift to cinema before the curtain fell forever.
I just started to be the best possible actor I could be, and that was the end of that.
He even started writing his memoirs, a book literally titled, "Don't Look Back, You'll Trip Over," as if preparing his own eulogy. The industry mourned quietly, fans accepted reluctantly, and Michael Caine, the eternal gentleman of British cinema, retreated to his Surrey estate to count his remaining sunsets.
I was never going to be like Laurence Olivier or like that, or John Gielgud, theatre actors or big movie stars like Cary Grant.
But something happened in September 2024 that nobody saw coming. A phone call that would shatter his retirement and reveal a truth about Michael Caine that even he didn't fully understand.
They're defining moments for me.
The tabloids had already written his obituary, saved it in their computers, ready to publish at a moment's notice. His IMDb page had that sad finality of someone whose last credit would never change. Even his own brother Stanley had started speaking of him in past tense during interviews, that unconscious shift that happens when someone you love starts fading.
You've got wonderful things to say, but you sit there and listen, think of these extraordinary things to say, and then decide not to say them.
At 92, when most men are content with memories, when his body screams in protest with every movement, when death hoaxes about him trend monthly on social media, each one more believable than the last, Sir Michael Caine is returning to Hollywood.
The great thing about growing old is you haven't got an alternative. The only alternative is death, so you might as well be cheerful.
Not for a cameo, not for a voice role from the comfort of a studio booth, not for some gentle farewell project designed to ease him into obscurity, but for a full action film that will demand everything his failing body can no longer give.
You have to behave, you mustn't act. You have to react, and you have to listen.
The insurance papers alone required 17 signatures and a medical examination that lasted 4 hours. The question isn't just why he's doing it, but what secret force could possibly be powerful enough to drag a legend back from the edge of goodbye? What truth about himself is he still trying to prove, and to whom? The announcement came like thunder on a clear day. October 2023, The Great Escaper had just premiered to the best reviews of his career.
Like it?
Looks very expensive.
Critics called it a masterclass, a perfect farewell from a perfect gentleman. He sat in his study, surrounded by 2 Oscars, 3 Golden Globes, and a BAFTA fellowship, reading reviews that should have made him proud. Instead, he felt something else entirely. What do I have to do to beat these reviews? He asked his wife Shakira, and in that question lay the answer. He wasn't trying to beat them. He was trying to leave them. 2 days later, he made it official. "I am bloody 90 now and I can't walk properly," he told the BBC. "I've had a great career, but I'm done."
My life wasn't even better than my father's. My life was out of all compared to anything that I ever dreamed of.
The medical reports painted a crueler picture than any tabloid dared. Spinal stenosis had turned his backbone into a prison of narrowing channels, each movement sending lightning through his nerves. The fall in 2018 had shattered more than bone. It had broken the illusion that willpower could conquer flesh. His doctors were blunt in that particularly British way that manages to be both polite and devastating.
Worry about it. When you get into that situation, are you going to be a coward? Are you going to be yellow and run?
The condition was degenerative, irreversible, and would only get worse. Every role would now require not just memorizing lines, but calculating whether his body could survive the performance. Insurance companies started adding clauses, studios whispered about liability, and suddenly the phone that had rung for 7 decades went quiet. But the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. For a man who had worked since age 14, who had filmed over 160 movies, who measured life not in years but in productions, retirement felt less like rest and more like erasure.
I suffer from incredible claustrophobia now. You know, I can't, you can't shut a door on me anywhere.
He tried to embrace it, told himself this was earned, deserved, natural. He wrote in his study, tended his garden, watched old films where a younger version of himself moved without thinking, fought without wincing, stood without calculating the distance to the nearest chair. Some mornings he'd reach for scripts that weren't there, rehearse lines for films that would never be made, and catch himself studying his reflection as if preparing for a role that had been permanently recast. His wife Shakira watched this slow dissolution with the wisdom of someone who had seen him survive worse. She'd pulled him back from 2 bottles of vodka a day in the 70s, held him through the deaths of friends like Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and Terrence Stamp, steadied him through scandals and triumphs alike. She'd seen him cry exactly 3 times in 50 years, once when his mother died, once when he held their first grandchild, and once when his body first betrayed him and he couldn't get up the stairs without help. But this was different. This wasn't grief or addiction or failure. This was the particular torture of a performer without a stage, a storyteller with no more stories to tell, a man who had defined himself by action, suddenly rendered immobile.
I don't have anything to do, and if nobody gives me a script that I really want to do, I'll be retired.
The house felt larger without purpose filling it, the days longer without call sheets structuring them, the silence louder without lines to memorize, breaking it. "You're still a lion," she'd whisper when the pain kept him awake, when the cane felt heavier than it should, when he'd stare at the phone that refused to ring. She'd make him his favorite breakfast, the same one his mother used to make with leftover bread and drippings, and pretend not to notice when he only ate half.
You didn't just fall in love with her looks, did you?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and then I fell in love with her. Then I stayed in love with her for the rest of my life, and will do.
She'd put on his favorite Sinatra records and dance alone in the living room until he couldn't help but smile. Little did either of them know that soon, very soon, it would ring with an offer that would change everything, that would test every promise she'd made to keep him safe, that would prove whether a lion could still roar when winter had already come. To understand why Michael Caine can't truly retire, you have to understand the secret that shaped his entire life, a revelation so shocking that when he discovered it at age 60, it rewrote everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and family.
We decided we wanted him to be the antithesis of Bond.
The call came from a newspaper reporter in 1992, the kind of call celebrities usually dodge or delegate. But something in the reporter's voice made him listen. "Did you know about your half-brother David?" The words hung in the air like smoke from a bomb that had just detonated. Michael Caine, the man who thought he knew every corner of his working-class childhood, every sacrifice his mother made, every reason she'd fought so hard to protect him, suddenly realized he knew nothing at all. For 50 years, his mother Ellen had lived a double life. Every week, rain or shine, war or peace, she'd announce she was going shopping. She'd put on her best coat, grab her worn purse, and disappear for hours. The family never questioned it, never followed, never wondered why she came back without packages. Because Ellen Frances Micklewhite wasn't shopping. She was visiting her firstborn son, David, who had been born with severe epilepsy and mental disabilities, hidden away in Cane Hill Hospital since he was 2 years old. For half a century, she made that journey alone, carried that weight in silence, loved a child the world told her to forget. The revelation shattered Michael Caine in ways his poverty never could, in ways the war never managed, in ways that failure and rejection had never achieved. This woman who had kicked down doors to rescue him from wartime abuse, who had scraped and saved to keep food on their table, who had been his definition of strength and truth, had been living with a grief so profound she couldn't even speak it aloud. When he confronted her, gently, carefully, the way you approach a wound that's never healed, she simply said, "I didn't want you to feel different. I didn't want you to carry what I carried." In that moment, he understood that love sometimes means keeping your breaking heart so quiet that even your children can't hear it crack. David died before Michael could properly know him, another ghost in a life already haunted by too many. But the discovery changed everything about how he saw his mother, his childhood, and himself. Every role he'd played, a fierce protector, every character who carried secret pain, every performance of quiet strength suddenly made sense. He'd been channeling his mother all along, the woman who loved so fiercely she kept her greatest sorrow silent, who visited her lost son for 50 years without complaint, without explanation, without ever asking for comfort in return. It's why even now, at 92, he can't stop working, can't stop creating, can't stop honoring the woman who taught him that sometimes the greatest act of love is to keep going when everything inside you wants to stop. If Ellen taught him to survive, Shakira taught him to live, though when they first met, Michael Caine was doing neither. By 1970, he was drowning in success, literally.
Who do you think you are with your voice? What are you going to do?
2 bottles of vodka a day had become his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The parties never ended because ending them meant facing the silence, and in that silence lived every ghost he'd been running from since childhood. He'd filmed The Italian Job drunk, Get Carter hungover, and was slowly poisoning himself with the kind of dedication he usually reserved for learning scripts. Friends stopped calling it drinking and started calling it dying in slow motion. "I would have been dead in 6 months," he later admitted, and everyone who knew him then agrees he's being generous with the timeline. Then came the evening that changed everything, though it started like 100 others. Alone in his flat, half-drunk already, television flickering against walls that had heard too many lonely nights. A Maxwell House coffee commercial came on, the kind of thing he'd normally ignore, but something made him look up. A woman appeared on screen, holding a coffee cup with such grace it looked like she was offering salvation itself. Her smile wasn't performed, it was real, warm, knowing, as if she could see through the screen to the broken man watching her. "I'm going to marry that woman," he announced to his empty room, and for the first time in years, Michael Caine was completely sober in his certainty. Finding her should have been impossible, but impossible had never stopped him before. Her name was Shakira Bakshi, a former Miss Guyana living in London, and when he finally got her number, she said no. He called again. She said no again and again and again. 12 times she rejected Michael Caine, the movie star, the millionaire, the man who could have anyone. On the 13th call, perhaps worn down, perhaps intrigued by his persistence, perhaps sensing something in his voice that fame couldn't fake, she said yes. "It took her 8 minutes to fall in love with me," he jokes now. "It took her 2 hours. But I knew in 8 minutes I'd found my reason to stop dying." She didn't save him with ultimatums or threats or dramatic interventions. She saved him by seeing past the performance to the frightened boy still hiding from bombs, still missing his father, still carrying secrets he'd never spoken aloud. She made him want to be better without ever saying he wasn't enough. The vodka disappeared not because she demanded it, but because he wanted to remember every moment with her clearly.
Yeah, well, I have complete control over everything I do.
The parties ended not because she complained, but because he'd rather be home with her than anywhere else on earth. She became his anchor, his compass, his proof that love could be quiet and still be fierce, that strength could be gentle and still move mountains. 52 years later, when people ask how he survived when so many of his generation didn't, he doesn't mention willpower or wisdom or luck. He simply says, Shakira, and in that single word lives a love story more powerful than any role he's ever played.
You must listen to what the other person's saying, even though you know what he's going to say.
The call that shattered his retirement came from the last person anyone expected, Vin Diesel. Not a director he'd worked with before, not Christopher Nolan offering another prestigious project, not even a British production wanting one last performance from their national treasure. But Vin Diesel, action star, blockbuster king, and apparently devoted Michael Caine fanatic who refused to accept that his hero's story was over. The offer was for The Last Witch Hunter 2, a sequel to a film that had barely made a profit, in a genre Michael had never truly conquered, requiring physical demands his body could no longer meet. Every logical bone in his 92-year-old frame should have said no. His agents said no. His doctors strongly advised no. Even Shakira, his eternal supporter, gently suggested maybe this wasn't the one. But something in Diesel's voice, the way he said, "I need you," not "I want you," made Michael Caine do what he'd done his entire life: the impossible. What the public doesn't know is that this isn't about money. With $60 million in the bank and a lifestyle that's comfortable but never ostentatious, Michael Caine doesn't need another paycheck. His houses are paid for, his grandchildren's education secured, his charitable foundations funded for decades. When he bought a Rolls-Royce in the 80s, he paid cash and then barely drove it, preferring his old Volkswagen because it reminded him of simpler times. It's not about glory either. 2 Oscars and a knighthood have given him more recognition than any man could reasonably want. The Queen herself had touched his shoulder with a sword and declared him Sir Maurice Micklewhite, using his real name out of respect for his mother's memory. His handprints are in cement outside Grauman's Chinese theater, his face on British stamps, his voice in the consciousness of 3 generations. It's not even about proving he can still do it, because honestly, he's not sure he can. What it's about is something Vin Diesel understood when he made that call, something he recognized from watching Michael's recent interviews, from seeing the emptiness behind those still bright eyes when he talked about retirement. Diesel had lost Paul Walker, understood how suddenly life can end, how waiting for the perfect moment means never moving at all. It's about purpose. It's about the terror of becoming past tense while your heart still beats in present. It's about refusing to be archived while you're still breathing. It's about a lion who would rather die roaring than live in comfortable silence, who knows that the real death isn't when your heart stops, but when you stop having a reason for it to beat. The preparation is grueling in ways that would break men half his age. Every morning starts 2 hours earlier now, not for makeup or script review, but for the cocktail of medications that make movement possible. The spinal stenosis hasn't improved, can't improve, will only worsen. But there are windows, brief moments when the pain medication peaks and the inflammation subsides, where he can pretend his body isn't betraying him. He's working with a physical therapist who specializes in geriatric actors, though Michael is her oldest client by a decade. She's teaching him how to fake strength, how to position his body so the camera won't catch the tremor, how to lean without looking like he's leaning. "We're not fighting age," she told him. "We're negotiating with it." But here's what's beautiful, what's heartbreaking, what's fundamentally Michael Caine about this whole impossible endeavor. He's not pretending it's easy. In every interview about the film, he's honest about the challenge, about the pain, about the very real possibility this could be the thing that finishes him. "My wife calls me a lion in winter," he says with that characteristic self-deprecating smile. But even old lions remember how to hunt. When they start filming in September 2025, he'll be 92 and a half. The insurance alone costs more than most independent films' entire budgets. Every single day of shooting requires an on-set medical team. They're building special chairs that look like set pieces, but are actually carefully disguised support systems. They're using body doubles for everything except close-ups and dialogue. And yet, when you see him in that costume, when the cameras roll and he becomes someone else one more time, every person on that set knows they're witnessing something sacred. Not just an actor playing a role, but a man refusing to let time write his final scene. Perhaps the greatest role Michael Caine has ever played is himself, the working-class boy who refused to accept the limitations of birth, the soldier who came home from war determined to live, the drunk who chose love over vodka, the son who forgave his mother's secrets, the father who learned from his failures, the husband who credits his wife with saving his life, and now, the 92-year-old legend who won't let go of the thing that makes him feel alive. His new book, coming March 2025, is titled "Don't Look Back, You'll Trip Over." But the truth is, Michael Caine has spent his entire life looking back, learning from it, and then moving forward anyway. When the death hoaxes trend, which they do with exhausting regularity now, he doesn't get angry or upset. He understands what they represent, the world practicing for goodbye, trying to prepare for the inevitable loss of someone who's been part of our lives for longer than most of us have been alive. But he's not ready to be mourned yet. Not when there are still stories to tell, still performances to give, still that little boy from Rotherhithe inside him who learned that the only way to survive the bombs is to keep moving. The real tragedy would be dying with something left unsaid, unplayed, ungiven. Critics will say he should have stayed retired, that The Last Witch Hunter 2 is beneath him, that he's tarnishing his legacy, that at 92 he should be content with memories. They're probably right. But being right has never been what Michael Caine is about. He's about being present, being working, being unwilling to go gentle into that good night. His body is failing, that's undeniable. The cane is permanent now, the pills are countless, the pain is constant. But inside that failing frame beats the heart of someone who knows a secret most of us spend our whole lives missing. That purpose doesn't have an expiration date, that passion doesn't recognize retirement, that the only real tragedy is not the ending, but giving up before it's written. So when you see him on screen in 2025, moving slower than before, speaking softer than you remember, holding on to Vin Diesel's arm, not for the scene but for support, don't feel sorry for Michael Caine. Feel inspired, because you're not watching an old man struggle to reclaim past glory. You're watching someone demonstrate that life isn't about the years you accumulate, but what you do with the ones you have left. You're watching someone prove that dignity isn't in pretending you're still young, but in refusing to act old. You're watching someone who understands that the only difference between a farewell and a comeback is whether you're brave enough to answer when opportunity calls. And somewhere in that Surrey estate, reading his scripts with magnified glasses, rehearsing lines while gripping his walking cane, preparing for a film that might be his last, but approaching it like it's his first, Sir Michael Caine is teaching us one final lesson. Not about acting or fame or success, but about the beautiful defiance of continuing to dream when the world insists you should be done dreaming. He'll be 93 when the film releases. The odds are against him. His body protests every decision. Logic says this is madness. But Michael Caine has never listened to logic. He listens to that voice inside that says one more time, one more role, one more chance to feel alive. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest performance of all.
So you might as well be cheerful and have the greatest possible life you can have.